Welcome to Transformation Acceleration Forum's seminar on accelerating digital transformation and networks. Two seminars were on government and industry collaboration and maximizing metaverse opportunities, and both were related to successfully promoting and accelerating sector-wide digital transformation and identifying and maximizing potential opportunities of the metaverse. I hope you found these seminars relevant and informative. The term digital transformation is one of the most widely and frequently used nowadays, and not only in the ICT sector, but across many sectors across the economy. And we all know that the telco sector plays a critical role in driving digitization across organizations, industries, and the wider economy. However, the sector can also unlock significant value internally by going through its own process of digital transformation. We all know that. So this virtual seminar will focus on the approaches the telco sector is taking to really digitally transform their internal and external functions, cultures, processes, services, networks, and so on, and how these approaches must work in harmony to enable and realize successful overall digital transformation. So before we start, I'd like to invite GSMA's Head of APAC, Julian Gorman, to welcome you to this Accelerating Digital Transformation and Networks virtual seminar. Julian, over to you.
Thanks, Johnny. Good afternoon. On behalf of GSMA APAC, I'd like to welcome to the XAF Accelerating Digital Transformation and Networks webinar. For those of you who have joined our previous webinars, you have been able to map the journey we've traveled with you since the first launch of 5G in 2019. From a focus on the new network generation to now an agenda and a focus where 5G is one of a portfolio of advanced digital technologies, which are transforming industry and increasingly our digital nation economies. Of course, with any new enabling technology, its growth, adoption, impact, and success ultimately rest on the pioneers who really explore the boundaries of innovation and customer needs to develop new business models, use cases, and its usability. But one element often overlooked as a new network generation rolled out is the transformation required or undergoing in mobile operators that provide the stable foundations for the pioneers to build on, really. Today's webinar provides some insights on the steps that have been taken in that journey by some of the pioneers in Asia Pacific. I had the pleasure of joining the GSMA board meetings in Kuala Lumpur this weekend past. And I can tell you what is top of mind in the discussions and debates is really the innovation and the transformation that is being led in Asia Pacific and Asia, and how it can transform and be transported other parts of the world as a best practice and increasingly innovative use cases. So for today, I'd like to thank the speakers for sharing their time and experience today. I'd also like to thank Cineverse, Rakuten Mobile, and Accenture for their support in making the event possible. I'd like to thank you for joining the discussion and invite you to participate in the chat, especially and ask questions and be part of the DXAF community that is here to serve your interest and help you solve your challenges as you transform your business and move towards stronger digital nations. So thanks, Johnny, and let's get started.
Great. Thanks, Julian. Now I invite my colleague, Peter Jarek, to set the scene for this seminar by presenting on digital transformation, telco's greatest contribution to sustainability. Peter is Head of GSMA Intelligence at GSMA. So Peter, over to you.
Great, thank you, Johnny. And just to reiterate what Julian said, thanks to everyone for joining us. I think this is a great forum that's being set up, and I'm really glad to be providing some context. So, as Johnny said, I'm the head of GSMA Intelligence. If we go on to the next slide, most of you hopefully know this, but GSMA Intelligence is the research and consulting arm of the GSMA. And again, it's the research and consulting arm. We've got 3 offices. We've got folks in London, Barcelona. I've got folks in the APAC region. It's my team's job to provide research, data, insights to help everyone be successful, help the industry move forward. Hopefully a lot of you know who we are, so I won't dwell on, but if you do have questions, please reach out afterwards. But what I really want to do is talk a bit about how we see digital transformation, and one, why we see it important in telcos, but 2, why we see telcos and digital transformation being even more important than to the telco industry, but to the world and to all industries. So let's move on to the next slide. So what you'll see on this first content slide is we do a survey every year where we go out and we talk with operators. And obviously, one of the big benefits of being within the GSMA is having a great relationship with operators. And we ask them, what's driving your network transformation thinking, right? What's critical? And what we do is we see that, there's a handful of things. We break it down very simply, right? It's about making money, saving money. Is it about generating new revenues and user experience? Not surprisingly, you see that the making money, the customer experience side of things, those are the most important, right? And you see this on the slide here in terms of OpEx, CapEx, generating new revenues, user experience. But what's critical is that across all of these, digital transformation plays a part, right? Whether that's through new services like 4G, 5G, and just the IPification of networks, whether that's through cloud slicing, through new automation technologies. So at a fundamental level, digital transformation is there and what is driving operator strategies around the networks and how they think about their services. And now we see this every day, particularly around 5G. And so if we go on to the next slide, I think we all know this conversation around life in the 5G era, right? That critical to 5G, and one of the real reasons why we launched it, was to support new industry verticals, to help them in their digital transformation, and in doing so, generate new revenues, right? That was the real 5G promise, the moving to new use cases beyond faster speeds, right? And we've seen that, and you see some data here about this is what the industry, this is what CEOs thinks will be the value of 5G. Now, if we go to the next slide, we see the industry making some progress here, right? And what the progress is showing is that, yes, on beyond connectivity revenues, moving just beyond connectivity, operators are making progress. You've got some data here from 2017, some data from 2020. We will be releasing our 2021 report, looking at last year pretty soon. And on the B2B side of things, you see that number slowly growing, right? 27, 28, 29, 30%. I'm sure it will grow again more this year. So we do see operators making the most of this 5G era opportunity, and they are growing their role in beyond connectivity and B2B revenues. If we go to the next slide, what we see on this next slide then is that this is something that, not surprisingly, operators get, right? They're making success. It's not just because of 5G, it's because they understand the opportunity and they understand what's required. So again, when we go out and we talk with operators, this is the result of some of those conversations, and we ask them, what is important to you? What do you need to be successful in the enterprise? Again, to tap those new revenue opportunities. Well, what do we find? We find it's those digital tools that they see being very important. Yes, standalone 5G. Operations automation, SLAs that help them track service performance, network performance, right? They get digital capabilities are important to being successful in the enterprise. No doubt that plays into why they have been successful. And if we see on the next slide, we turn this around, right? And we ask this question, not just in terms of what do you need for the enterprise, but what network transformation priorities are important to you? What technologies are critical there? Well, then what do we see? Again, we see things that are particularly important from a digital transformation perspective. Security, we all know how important that is on the network side or security side. Cloud and IT technologies though, automation, those digital transformation, those internal, as Julian called out, those internal side of things of how we transform a telco's operations internally are critical beyond the sort of, as we'll call, of the moment things like sustainability, right? And here's where I want to take a bit of a turn, right? And I want to go on to the next slide. I'd ask this question on this next slide. Is it really fair to call sustainability of the moment? And I would say no. And this is where I think is a really important thing to talk about and work that we've done. Sustainability is more than just sort of a, hey, it's a cool hot topic right now, right? It's something that is becoming incredibly important to operators. And I think we understand why. But if we go out and we look at the energy consumption expected of networks going forward in the 5G era, we see at a base case, we're looking at 350% increase, right? High case, it could be more than almost 500%, right? And it's not because 5G is less efficient, because people are doing more with these networks. We see this reflected then when we look at what's happening at the governance level, right? When we look at the proposals that are taking place from a corporate governance perspective, the biggest share of those proxies and proposals on the ESG perspective, they're around green issues. So the CFOs care because there's money involved. The customers are caring. These are very important issues to operators. Sustainability, the operator role in it, Very, very important. Now, if we go to the next slide, there's good news here. Right? The good news that we see is that, yes, we understand the intensities, what's driving that network usage, what's driving the energy consumption, right? Lots more video streaming, higher bandwidth. Yes, 5G drives some of that. LTE drives more of the traffic, but we also know the mitigations, right? More spectral efficiency from 5G and 4G, right? Network efficiencies from things like AI, sunsetting of older technologies, the use of renewables. So we get that, right? But I think it's important to recognize something here. On the next slide, I think we'll see this, that yes, telcos import can improve their position around energy consumption, network efficiency. But the reality is the telco sector is not by a far margin the biggest user of energy, right? They're a minor part of global energy consumption. And you see this, right? If you look at the share of CO2 emissions by industry, you see power and energy, transport, buildings, manufacturing. Those are all the industries that need to figure out how to reduce their carbon emissions, how to improve their sustainability footprint going forward. And this is where I think the real interesting story for digital transformation and telcos is, because there's a huge role that digital transformation and the telco industry can play in helping these industries. Again, these industries that really need to be getting on the ball, that really need to be doing their part, there's a huge role that the industry can play. So let's go on to the next slide for some examples there. Right? So what are some of the examples, right? Well, if we look at buildings, right, it's smart meters, it's HVAC optimization, right? It's avoiding truck rolls. Same thing with transport, right? Autonomous vehicles. We're talking about smart routing. We're talking about remote working. So you don't have to have transport, right? People don't have to be going places. Predictive maintenance. And that predictive maintenance plays a part in all of this, whether it's manufacturing, power, energy, right? Connected grids and power energy, incredibly important. Again, predictive maintenance, monitoring, avoiding truck rolls across all of these. And what's the role of digital transformation in telcos? Well, it's moving, yes, broadband connectivity is important there, enabling the connectivity within those industries, but rolling out things like private wireless networks, IoT platforms that can connect everything, and pulling this all into the cloud. Now, these are just some interesting ideas, right? But more than ideas, we've done some work here to figure out what could the impact of telco and digital transformation mean. So we move to the next slide. Here's some examples, right? We've done the modeling. We went out, we worked with the industries, we did some of the modeling. And what you'll see on this next slide is there are huge benefits to be had across all of these. Right? If we look at smart meters, rolling out smart meters, there's a 22% improvement in decarbonization from these technologies, right? 29% if we're looking at transport, we're talking about smart routing. If we're talking about manufacturing, yes, 17%, a huge number, but it's still really, really important when we think about smart manufacturing. And then things like power and energy, 38% improvement if we're looking at something like connected solar grids, right? And this is the base case, right? It could be even higher depending upon a lot of the situations. So what's really important here is to recognize that if we move on to this next slide, I think this kind of wraps it up. We should think about digital transformation of technology, digital transformation of the telco sector, having internal and external implications. On the internal side, we're going to hear a lot about this. I think it's really important, right? Transformation of operations, of networks, really lead to new revenues, really lead to cost containment. It's what we know. But there's a bigger role to play here in terms of the role digital transformation can play and how telcos work with the rest of the world, external players, right? Industry verticals. And there, the impact is not just revenues, but potentially the future of the planet when we think about things like sustainability. Now, if we go on to this next slide, I'll say this is a topic we've been focusing a lot on. As you can imagine, here's an example of some of the research my team has done recently. I encourage you all, Julian said this, please engage, reach out. We'd love to talk with you after this, talk with you about what we're doing, what you guys need. And then this last slide, it's just a thank you. I'll be in multiple places. My team will be in a lot of places if we go to the last slide here. But of course, hopefully we'll see some of you at the next big event, that is MWC Las Vegas. Again, I'll have people in all sorts of areas, including the M360 coming up in region. But please reach out to us anytime. We're here to help. Thank you very much. It's back to you, Johnny.
Great. Thank you very much for a very insightful presentation, Peter, as always, and really setting the scene for this seminar. Now, I look forward to a really interesting fireside chat session with the CEO of a pioneering mobile operator, a disruptive mobile operator, Rakuten Mobile. Tariq Amin, CEO of both Rakuten Mobile and Rakuten Symphony, will share his vision and insight on what is required to truly digitally transform the telco sector. This fireside chat will be moderated by, again, my colleague, Peter Jarek, head of GSMA Intelligence. So over to you, Peter and Tariq.
Thank you very much, Johnny. And of course, thanks to everyone for joining us today. I'm super excited now to lead into our fireside chat. So I'm sure a lot of you are joining us and looking forward to this fireside chat, and I am as well. So I'm excited to be leading this with Tariq Amin. Tariq, hello. Great to have you here.
Nice to be with you, Peter.
Good. I know for most people, particularly who are looking at what's going on in telecom and what's going on in the region, that they know who you are, they know what's going on with Rakuten and Rakuten Symphony, but maybe just a bit of a quick introduction, and then we can lead into all the questions I've queued up.
Absolutely. So I am Tariq Amin. I am the CEO of Rakuten Mobile. I call that my day job, and my night job now, I'm the CEO of Rakuten Symphony, which is our platform company. And again, very, very happy to be here with you today, Peter.
Yeah, two CEO jobs. Obviously, your time is very, very in demand. So thanks for joining us. And I'm just going to dig into the questions right away. So the topic of the day is obviously digital transformation. And so let's start off with a really sort of top level question. I think early in my career, I was taught that when you think about any big initiative a company does, that it's done for one of two reasons: either to make money or save money. Now the reality, you can throw in regulation, and oftentimes may not make money or save money, but you got to do something because of regulation. But let's not think about that. From your perspective, what's the important part as you look at what you're doing within Rakuten, what you're doing broadly through the industry? What's the more important part? Is it making money or saving money?
Well, I think you need to look at it actually in both ways. I don't think one or the other. And you know, Peter, actually, if I tell you one of the primary reasons I've decided to join Rakuten is coming into the venture of building yet another greenfield after building and helping build Reliance Geo. For me, I was extremely excited about the possibility of working for an internet services company. So think about a company that is actually in internet services, wanting to interconnectivity. So I thought that this company really understood the terms and definitions of digital assets. Of course, when we talk about digital transformation, it already is a well-established company in different verticals, from e-commerce to travel, you know, and various fintech services in Japan. So I was intrigued about learning more about the culture of an internet service company. I call them even a hyperscaler that wants interconnectivity. So my view is, when we think and talk about digital transformation, I don't think you could think about it in the form of just about saving money. I think it is an amazing opportunity as well as to accelerate monetization through transformation. You drive agility, better customer experience, all the things that I think we know that are a critical part of this journey, as many players in the telco space consider and think through their transformation as they go from where they are today to what I think and believe where they want to be, which is a full digital service provider.
So it's interesting, you call out a few things there, in part just based on the work that Rakuten has done, but you mentioned customer experience. You know, obviously customer experience fits into the making money side of things, right? The better experience you can deliver, the more you can hold on to customers, perhaps the better you can monetize them. But how do you think of digital transformation linked to that customer experience? Is there a tangible link there to actually improving what you can deliver for them and making the services better for them?
Absolutely. I mean, let me take a very specific area. You know, within the telco industry, if you look at customer support as an example, you know, we've struggled over the decades talking about the concept of customer experience management as the new goal and objective, to move away from measuring network experience on I call it a counter-based approach, to now I'm measuring customer experience. And to this extent, how do I know what your experiences look like? And you know, and honestly, my honest view, no matter how much work has happened, I still don't think we are close to that dream. A dream where every customer is treated as a unique identity, and it's not an aggregation of statistics on a network to know what his or her experiences might look like in the network. When you call customer support and you wonder, did this customer had a good throughput experience, video experience, latency experience, I think we've done an okay job. I still don't think we are close to where one would desire. So, ideally, if you really think about it, before you call customer care, I should know exactly what you're calling for. What are the things that are really worrisome about the experiences that we're providing to you? Whether it is something due to your billing experience, your invoices, your network experience. And so Peter, don't misunderstand that we have made good progress. I just think that, honestly speaking, it's not good enough yet. I think the ability for us to get a comprehensive 360-degree view about the customer is still a work in progress, in my view. Even within my own organization, this is a daily battle, a battle to improve and understand the customer on a per unit basis, meaning individually, and not an aggregation of KPIs that are really cluttered in the network experience. So it is clearly evident to me that if we address this part, and if you passionately care about the customer and his and her journey during the transactions, touching your network day in and day out, I think, of course, that's going to improve your revenue. It's going to improve your churn. It's going to improve the lifetime value of a customer. So I think we made okay work, but I still, in my view, not good enough to where we need to be.
No, that's such a great point. And I'll say it is when we hear echoed from a lot of our other customers and operators around the world, even in the most basic form, right? This idea of 5G is so important because 5G can enable some great new capabilities for customers. But if we can't prove to them that they're getting what we're selling them in terms of those no capabilities, right? How can we actually get value from that, right? So we need to have that visibility, and it's a great point. But it leads me in then to the conversation, I guess, of 5G. I mean, so 5G is often sort of, it's called out as being unique from previous generations of technologies because it can support new verticals with new capabilities. And we know we're doing a lot of enterprise digital transformation with 4G already, but really 5G can deliver some new capabilities, or at least that's the story. So from your perspective, obviously Rakuten Mobile rolled out the 4G network. 5G is an important part of what you're doing, not just in Japan, but helping 5G, helping other operators around the world launch 5G. I mean, where do you see that connection? Is it just sort of is it coincidental? Hey, we're talking digital transformation, there's 5G, or is there a real connection between what 5G can do there?
Yeah, so I think Peter, if you look at our journey to building, the foundation of our infrastructure in Japan, I think for us it was really, really clear that it's not necessarily the generation that is providing the killer application for us. Maybe the killer application for us is our platform. That's one thing that I think differentiated quite a bit our approach to how we constructed and built 4G and 5G. And tomorrow we're, as we're today excited about 5G, I mean, as you have seen, well ahead of even 6G, we're starting to talk about 6G. So I think the killer use case that I saw was not necessarily yet the consumer or enterprise use cases. Maybe the first thing I thought we had to address in Japan is the fundamental building blocks of how networks are built, engineered, and operated. Maybe that was the killer use case for us, is the idea of taking the infrastructure build out from a complex one that requires significant investment in hardware to one that is a significant investment in software. So I think maybe for us, I would tell you this is where we departed from the rest of the world on how we build a 5G infrastructure. Rakuten Mobile has really been built on the essence of software. And maybe that was the key push that I wanted everybody from my own team to accomplish. And I think to a large extent, we are extremely delighted and happy that the mission around building a reliable, cloud native, completely virtualized infrastructure has been accomplished. Now, the truth about 5G, of course, we all celebrate it as a great technology. And there is no doubt, no debate that 5G is just an amazing technology. But if you look at where we are today, and is there a killer app today that has been materialized that takes advantage of this elegant network architecture, the latency that it could provide? The truth is we're not there yet today. I mean, we're talking a lot about possibilities of what we could do. I personally believe that we could see breakthroughs in enterprise use case a lot earlier than we would see breakthroughs in consumer use cases. So while I want to also celebrate the industry excitement about 5G, and no doubt about it, but I also want to be pragmatic that we still have to discover, not as an operator, but an ecosystem as a whole, including entrepreneurs, startups that needs to come through and give us some paths and insight of what 5G could be all about. And maybe the last thing I would love to hear your thoughts also, Peter, on this. See, today we talk in 5G in terms that I think is also maybe not necessarily the right way, right? We celebrate the success of hitting a gigabit per second. But is it truly that is the right metric to how we define 5G is? Well, if I think and I understand a bit or something about this technology, maybe we should talk about it from a different point of view. We should celebrate the possibilities of what ultra low latency could provide to future applications that are still being thought through, what ultra low latency could mean for factories and enterprises. So I am personally a bit frustrated that all what I see in social media and anywhere else, we're still talking about speed as the measurement of success. And I really tell you, I think that's a wrong measurement in the 5G era. And especially, by the way, even when we evolve to 6G in the future, I assure you that the world will change from speed perspective to edge and ultra low latency application becomes a dominant discussion. And so I'm super optimistic, but I still think we have a lot of work to be done. And it's not something that we as operator communities could solve on our own. I think this is an ecosystem creation that needs to come together to realize the elegance and beauty of this new platform and the access network that gets created with this technology.
No, it's a super great point. I mean, and it's interesting. I mean, it's something that lament might not be the appropriate word, but was having this conversation with some colleagues just the other week, looking at it's funny. It's 2022, and we're still seeing on a weekly, every other week basis some new announcement of we've hit a speed record, and oftentimes it's we've hit a speed record with this much CA or an uplink, or this doesn't look like it's the fastest number, but it's the fastest number when you're only aggregating two bands, or the fastest number with two bands on the uplink or millimeter wave. And so I think you're right. You do still see a lot of that discussion. I think it is partly how the industry, it's how the industry knows how to market itself, I think, to some extent, right? We have this history of speeds and feeds, which take place in the infrastructure side of things. Vendors talk about, their fastest router. I think operators, it's how they think. It's sexy sometimes for consumers. So I 100% agree. And there's a larger value in terms of what we can do in terms of slicing, in terms of edge, in terms of the capabilities, which I guess then leads me to sort of another question, because I definitely see this sort of that 5G is important, but it's less about 5G and maybe more about what we're doing with it. I mean, as part of the push, not just around 5G, but 4G, Rakuten Mobile, and now with Rakuten Symphony, open has been a big part of the way you look at this. You've been driving Open RAN. If we look at Rakuten Symphony and the way that you'll be, hosting different capabilities, obviously this open nature is at its core. I mean, how do you see the link between open, and I include sort of the cloudification of telco functions, right? Because when you have a cloud platform, it's essentially open to hopefully to multiple different functions. How do you see that linked to digital transformation and 5G? Is there a connection there, or do they need to go together?
I would say 100%. There's a massive connection, and I would tell you in general. I mentioned this story many times before. See, we as human beings gets inspired by industries that we enjoy reading about. I personally get inspired, not all the time, talking about what is happening in telco. Of course, that's important to me, but I also want to learn to these vertical adjacent industries that are doing things at a remarkable speed, remarkable agility. If I look at the internet services companies in the US, an Amazon, a Google, a Facebook, or Meta, and to a certain extent Apple and others, I got extremely inspired by a lot of things that they do that are really, really different than the telecommunication industry in general. I got inspired by how they run their operations. I got inspired by the level of agilities they do. I got inspired by the simplification on simple things like, the commodity appliance they use are standardized, they're common, they're not hundreds of them. Their software has been done and disaggregated from day zero on microservices. Kubernetes, think about how Kubernetes, that became now the de facto accepted infrastructure for cloud virtualization environments, started as an open source project. My view is, if you saw all of this happening in an industry that has experienced phenomenal growth in revenue, in customer adds, why we as mobile operators could not learn that maybe we should take lessons learned from that playbook, if you will. It is okay to learn from outside of our industry. What is the possibilities if we open our mind? Now, for me, I thought, before we talk even Open RAN, because everybody thinks that the story of Rakuten was about Open RAN, but it's far more than that. Open RAN is a small module of many things that happened to get us to where we are today. The first fundamental building blocks that I think that came to my mind is cloud. So the cloud was really, really important, but the cloud architecture that we wanted is one that is really horizontal, meaning I wanted to control all the workload applications in top, whether the cloud is deployed at a far edge in a regional data center or central data center. We needed this to be common. This cloud needed to sit on common infrastructure. By the way, again, no massive creativity other than saying, well, it worked in hyperscalers. Let me just copy that. I don't need to really worry about how to make it work. I just need to go through this journey and learn it. Now, why I say that is important in the context of digitization and as 5G comes in. Now, when you see the network functions, and yes, they are complex, and yes, they are different than IT applications. But when you start to see how they get elegantly onboarded on this cloud, the simplicity of operation, the simplicity of orchestration, if done right, then your mind open up and said, well, it'll be interesting if I get all these other IT applications to join on board, where I could truly have convergence of telco and IT sitting on the same cloud. So in Rakuten Mobile, I decided to build within Symphony, a slew of digital applications that don't necessarily, you can't classify them as telco applications, such as knowledge management system today, which is part of our billing system. We build internally our customer relationship management, even procurement, financial tools. I build all of them. And I build them honestly for the purpose of knowledge acquisition. I just wanted to understand, can we accomplish this dream and idea where I take complex telco applications and my IT applications, can I really put them on my same cloud and deploy them within my same fabric, within my same data centers? And this is the marvelous discovery for us, was what a phenomenal intersection. Yes, they do have different way of working, and they are different in the nature that complex telco workload might require specific requirement on the hardware infrastructure that IT applications don't need, but the possibility of convergence is very, very real, and the efficiencies to be realized by combining these two elements is massive. And so think about, I'll give you one example, maybe to close my thought on this. So if I look at the totality of an enterprise, see, the reason that I still wanted to retain the work in Rakuten Mobile while still looking at Symphony as a platform, I wanted to really drive this experiment, I call it, where I today have control over my organization. I could work with my team and say, can we use across engineering, customer support, marketing, and sales organization, for example, a common workflow engine. Now think in the context of just this simple statement. Maybe in the past, the horizontal silos that would exist in the organization, you would require different digital tools to manage their business. And now I started to push this idea to say, well, now I have this elegant 5G cloud infrastructure. Can I start putting IT applications that are common across all my different business units within my organization? And this is what I am discovering, that the efficiencies is unprecedented. What I saw in terms of unification between, let's say, sales, marketing, support organization, and the engineering by unification of platforms and application was just tremendous. And this is just, I look at this internal, and I can't even start to tell you what the opportunity would be external as we get better to start thinking about different services and platforms that we could market and sell on top of our internal cloud that we have built in Rakuten Mobile. So yes, I do think that they need to go hand by hand. I think if an operator wants to be a full digital platform enable, a digital service provider, I think cloud becomes the essence of what they do. And then everything else into the cloud becomes the building blocks you need, including Open RAN and the various activities with core and transport and so on and so on. But it's definitely not just about Open RAN. It's much bigger than that to go from where we started 4 years ago till where we are today.
Yeah, and I think it's an important reminder, right? And that's why, I know cloud doesn't have to be open, right? But when we think cloudification, thinking about it in terms of openness is critical. And I would just double down on that point of looking at adjacent industries, other industries. I think we all learn so much. And you talk about looking at ISPs and cloud providers. I would take it a step further, right? Going and looking at the verticals that we hope to work with. You can learn so much from every now and then getting outside of our industry. But I think we also know that sort of goes without saying that a lot of us within the telco industry, we are insular, right? And we focus on our own industries, we focus on our own operations. And so, that leads to some sort of inertia, right? Inertia of telcos doing what they do. And there's a lot been made of the value of, let's say, greenfield versus brownfield. If you're a legacy operator with a lot of operations, you have regulators who are making sure that you have uptime that remains consistent. You get in trouble if you experiment and something goes wrong and whatnot. How do you see this for operators that don't have the benefit of being like a Rakuten Mobile and being able to build that and sort of come at this? And you obviously took this view of yes, there would have been silos in other organizations, but we're going to look at horizontal platforms as you talked about. If I'm an operator who, that ship has sailed, right? I've already got those horizontal silos. How should I think about that open side of things and maybe replicate some of what you're doing? And obviously you don't want to give them too many tips, but what suggestions do you have for helping them do better with digital transformation?
No, quite the contrary, Peter. I would love nothing else but to find our industry advance and move from where it is today. I have nothing but huge respect to the telecom world, because it's not easy, by the way. It really isn't easy. I've had the privilege to build networks fundamentally from the foundation of going and seeking sites to building the radio side, transport, and core. So I understand how difficult it is. However, I would tell you, I think if I give a simple advice to all my colleagues and the industry as a whole, I think we need to start by conviction and courage. Yes, takes a bit of risk, but you also have to realize that I think time, unfortunately, is not in our side. If we don't evolve to become far more software-driven organization, I think then we have relinquished the possibility and the dream of us offering advanced services beyond just basic connectivity. I don't know if I'm speaking out of line when I say I think most people don't just want to be a dumb pipe. I think my feeling is a lot of CXOs I talk to realize that there need to be a much more better benefit a mobile operator can offer to its consumer beyond just saying, look, here's my data rates, my tariff on data, and being creative and smart about how we package this. So when I started in Rakuten in 2018, many people said, look, of course it's greenfield, it was easy for you. But what the truth is, of course, it wasn't simple. Maybe the simplest thing for me was if I picked a traditional vendor, my life would have been much easier, by the way. I mean, this journey has not been easy at all. It's been challenging. But, to be very honest with you, I mean, deep down inside me, I was really, really frustrated that I looked at our ecosystem. And I have, again, this is not a criticism of our supplier at all that exists today, but I looked at it, I said, I need to open my mind to understand what to do different from what happened in the last 30 years of our life in telco. Since 1981, we've been chasing nothing but these hardware replacement projects. And I think maybe time is of the essence to recognize that even if you're a brownfield operator, the first thing that I think you have to start with before we talk about organization and skill sets and everything else in that is leadership team conviction that this is needed. And it's not an optional thing, it's a mandatory thing for survivability. This is what you need to do in order to compete against these adjacent industries that are well entrenched, by the way, in your business. It's imminent that it will happen. And I'm not saying anything that is, again, out of line, because you could see what happened in the original SMS revenues as OTT players came in, that got eroded. I mean, this is a fact. So if people feel that being just a connectivity player gives you comfort because you own this infrastructure, I think maybe my advice is it's maybe not necessarily the right thinking today. We should start with that fundamental belief that yes, transformation is difficult. However, we're going to take some calculated risks, and the risk of to go from current architecture to a fully digitized platform architecture in which cloud becomes absolutely part of its essence. I think it just becomes really, really critical for the organization. And then the second, which is really important, is the construct of the new organization is going to be a challenging task, no doubt. So for me, probably the best advantage that I had is not the fact that we were a greenfield in the architecture and the technology, but actually the best advantage, greenfield in the mentality of the employees that I recruited. So I had the opportunity to really handpick and evaluate who is going to be on my leadership team, evaluate the construct of the top of mix between subject matter experts in telco versus software developers, and really balance this very, very carefully. So I think that is the part I acknowledge really, really easy. And if I had an existing organization, the part that I would spend a lot of energy in, and I'm sure a lot of companies are doing it already, is a significant investment in upskilling my existing resources, the creation of a much aggressive path to bring highly skilled fresh grads, IT from top IT universities. For me, anywhere in the world I could hire them. I never had geography restriction, and I think this is another thing I'll give an advice to is hiring for tomorrow resources. For me, it no longer has geography of boundaries anymore. That is gone. So I have about 66 nationalities that work in my team. My average age is about 34 years old today within Symphony. And for Rakuten Mobile, it's even a bit younger than this. And this formula really, really worked well. All the technology pieces, I assure you, is secondary to the topics that I hit with you today, Peter. One, fundamental belief and courage that this is a path that one must evolve to. And then the second is the organization and skill sets that are needed to run and manage this new digital business of tomorrow. And the technology is just secondary. I don't think that there is any issues. We as professionals cannot find solutions to overcome the problems. But I would first really start with the building blocks that I think are critical for future success, which is conviction, belief, courage, and then organization.
No, that's, and I think it's such an important reminder. I mean, obviously, so much of the focus when people talk about what you're doing and look at what you're doing, look at the technology, but that fundamental reminder that you need C-suite management driving these changes because they're not easy, and then you need the people to help execute on those. I think particularly with the pandemic, the great attrition, whatever we want to call it, obviously we know that that resourcing has been critical. I'd imagine doing something cool and exciting and new has helped you bring in good people.
Oh my God, Peter!
I'm guessing it's made your life a little bit easier.
You know, I mean, look, I'm blessed. I'm really, really blessed. I personally like to do my own recruiting. So I'd be really honest with you. I think now what is happening is I just discovered that we have such amazing talent in this industry. They are just been all what they wanted. Give them the opportunity. So the inbound for me is massive. I mean, it is massive. I get more interests worldwide to come join us because they really want to be part of this journey. So Peter, I am extremely blessed and lucky that recruiting for us has been relatively a non-eventful activity, because I just think that people want to be part of this technology and disruption that we're doing.
Great. Well, that is a great note to end on. I think tons of lessons for everyone. Thank you again. I know your time is precious. We really, really appreciate this. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much.
It's great talking to you.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you for a very insightful and informative fireside chat, Tariq and Peter. Now, I'd like to move on to one of key enablers of digital transformation of telco networks and services. And I invite David Hassman from Cineverse Technologies to deliver his presentation on driving digital transformation and exponential growth through 5G mobility. David Hassman is a Vice President of Strategy for Cineverse and is joining us late in the evening from the US West Coast. So David, thank you again for participating as speaker so late in the evening your time. The screen is yours.
All right, thank you, Johnny. Much appreciated. And fantastic session with Tariq and Peter there. I took a couple pages of notes myself, and I guess my big takeaway there is that, as you know, 5G is just not a network transformation by any stretch of the means. It's a transformation along multiple axes, including, you know, obviously the network itself, ways of working, employee ways of working, and business models themselves. And I think as we, as Johnny said at the beginning, you know, you can't get away from the words digital transformation these days in the enterprise. And then if you kind of couple that what Peter was talking about with 5G being, you know, going beyond speeds and feeds and into new use cases, you know, we've got a big opportunity in front of us as the mobile industry to capitalize on this. So Peter had a slide early in his presentation around the operators' priorities around digital transformation. Here we're showing what are the enterprise's priorities and for the top benefits of digital transformation. And I think what's really interesting to look at here is the first two. It's one, we have a very much of a internal looking type of benefit in terms of, you know, operational benefits from, you know, new digital technologies. This one kind of, you know, it's kind of obvious, right? I mean, whether it's improving manufacturing, internal processes, data flows, and the like. But then when you look at the next one, meeting, you know, the changing customer expectations. So certainly improving your internal operations is going to feed a lot into that. But then when we look at the, you know, which just occurred with the pandemic, our customers' expectations have changed quite a bit on what they're expecting, everywhere from how services are delivered to them, how they're consuming entertainment, and automation, you know, whether it's, you know, some type of home security while people are spending more time at the home office, or, you know, doorbells with video cameras on them, or just experiences when they go into the world, right? You're kind of the touchless hotel experience, if you will. So definitely, you know, consumer expectations are changing. And then I think important to kind of, wrap this up is, it's not what companies are going to implement new digital technologies for technology's sake. They are going to run business cases to understand what are the benefits they're going to gain by this. Certainly, they're going to look for financial returns, but also workforce diversity targets, and then kind of back to what Peter was talking about at the beginning. They're going to use their digital transformation to have environmental targets. I mean, ESG is a very important thing today. So I guess moving along, and that kind of all begs the question, where how does 5G play into this? And I think we need to look at both, businesses and consumers on what they're looking for and how they kind of align back to those priorities. I think, looking down the business track, in terms of IoT, I think this is going to speak directly to a lot of the operational, efficiency. The second one, improve communication with customers. I mean, we are sitting here on a Zoom today, right? Needing high bandwidth into remote locations, but also a very rich experience. It's not just so much of a grainy video that we've gotten over our phone at one time. People expect a high definition experience. They expect kind of an interactive, multimedia experience, whether it's slides, videos, chat sessions and the like. So, we have seen, especially with the pandemic, people's method of communications and the way businesses want to communicate with their customers changing. Kind of overriding all of this is just security and making sure that these conversations with consumers are guarded. Customer data is guarded. Internal data are guarded in data flows. But also, as if we go back to the list of priorities, I mean, there are a lot of product related benefits that businesses are looking to 5G for to help them with. Then going over to the consumer side, obviously we talked about, entertainment itself, right? It may be entertainment, mobile entertainment now, not just to your smartphone, which obviously with the ever increasing quality of the screens, but now tablets, right? People wanting to consume their entertainment mobily, no longer just sitting, in front of a TV, multi-device entertainment, right? So looking to some of those things for the ultra low latency and the higher bandwidth that 5G provides. The interactive video, right? The chat sessions we now want to have mobilely, right? So now we have to look at the uplink for that. Thinking this was going to be a big driver, but again, I think another driver from the pandemic and people looking to different modes of methods of education and communication is really those virtual and augmented reality experiences, whether it is through a mobile device, but as the proliferation of those virtual reality headsets come along, and then it's kind of linked to the last one is that multiplayer gaming type of experience or multiplayer interaction, right? The pandemic, as we have been isolated in our places of residence, but we're still human beings. We yearn for interaction with each other. So now I think the explosion of those multiplayer interaction, whether it's through games or other means, again, requires really the changing habits and needs of consumers, which 5G can ultimately bring. I think the next two slides, I'm going to touch on real quickly because one is, a lot of Peter's great work, just showing where we are with 5G subscriptions today and how we're looking that into the future. But then also, where are we, with 5G deployments today across the globe? And that's both from a standalone experience and a non-standalone experience. And I think the point is here is that we have reached critical mass now with 5G on a global basis for enterprises now to really start considering 5G as part of their digital transformation plans. So very excited about this. I mean, there's pretty much on every continent you can go and have a 5G experience somewhere. So we are to the point now where it's not where enterprises kind of push it off, say, okay, great, I understand all these great benefits that 5G is going to bring us. Come back to me when I can actually use it. Well, we are there today. I think tying back into a little bit what Tariq was talking about is right. I mean, there's a promise of 5G, and there's where we are today, and it's going to be an evolution, and we need to make sure that we tie the use cases that we talk with enterprises about to realistically, where we are with, the deployment of 5G. We don't want to talk about use cases that we're honestly not going to be ready for a couple of years yet. Let's talk about the use cases today that they can deploy today, get benefits from today, and layer in the new use cases as we evolve our networks. So I think it's really important about when we talk about these use cases, setting expectations, and then aligning that with our own network plans. As we can certainly start today with LTE. There are a number of use cases that our LTE networks can certainly support. But as we move to deploying 5G NR, and then as we finally move to full 5G with NR and SA deployed, and all the various other things that will evolve over time to make sure that we pace that appropriately. So once we get to there, right, what is, the full benefit of 5G and deploying 5G standalone? We're early, right? But we're finally moving, right? We do have operators across the globe deploying standalone. We do need to watch also not only the deployments, but really just starting from the beginning, what's happening with the standards, what's happening at GSMA, with the various, working groups on some of the other aspects of 5G, and make sure we're timing those out so we have a very clear roadmap of the features and capabilities coming to market. I list here a number of things that are going to come in terms of, very exciting things like the ultra low latency, the network slicing, and then the new use cases around that. Something probably not as talked about as much is kind of 5G messaging and voice services. When we think of our digital transformation, this is something we definitely need to understand on what are the new user experiences that these type of services and the infrastructure that we're going to put in place bring. It's the IMS and the RCS services that have to be there just to deploy this. So we have to start thinking of the use cases. What are the methods that businesses can now reach out to their customers in terms of an advanced messaging type of experience or an advanced voice type of experience, right? How can we improve that with these capabilities we're bringing? And then finally, when we're looking at many of these new 5G use cases, a lot of them need to go beyond just the single operator's network. When we look at logistics, autonomous vehicles, the public to private network interaction, we need to think about beyond our network. What are the roaming capabilities that we are going to need with the whole mobile ecosystem to make this happen? And how are we going to manage that, right? So if we have an ultra, low latency service, how do we manage that across operator network boundaries? If we have advanced network slicing, how do we continue to manage that slice, again, across boundaries? So a lot of things that we need to think about as we deploy these services, build out our roadmaps, not just on the technology that we're going to deploy, but on the use cases that we are going to sell both enterprises and consumers. So there are some challenges here that we have to make sure that we address. The first one probably is not even listed here, It's actually having the spectrum to deploy 5G. For some operators, this is not a problem. But for many of them, this is a problem. You know, certainly there's a lot of spectrum that has been come to market in the millimeter wave band. I think something we've seen as an industry is that we also want to deploy 5G in the mid band for certain use cases. We have some experience here where we're working with 2 large operators in the US here, helping them, you know, shut down their 3G networks to free up that spectrum. But at the same time, right, they have a roaming business, if you will. So they need to provide, you know, 3G support, or, you know, for inbound roamers that don't have VoLTE support on their home network, to still be able to support them on that. So it's very important that we make sure that we make, you know, the freeing up of spectrum as painless as possible, not just for a single operator themselves, but you know, let them continue their business models and their commercial models, and for the whole mobile ecosystem in general. So that's probably the first, you know, challenge that we have to tackle. The second is device connectivity for these enterprise and IoT applications. So, you know, what does that mean? Well, that really means moving beyond the smartphone, right? So a smartphone has a human on the other end. If something goes wrong, we can have that human interaction. So how do we manage these humanless devices, if you will? And kind of coupled with that, right, is how do we, you know, create, authenticate, now secure all these new connections? And that's not just a device to a network connection. Again, as we think about the ecosystem, that's a network network connection, whether that's a mobile operator, a cloud service provider, an internal enterprise network. And then there's another thing I'll take from Tariq's comment is, you know, 5G is not just going to happen for a single operator alone. It's going to create an ecosystem needs to be created. Right, we need to go beyond just, you know, a contract between an enterprise or a user and the operator themselves. We're going to have this ever-expanding ecosystem of cloud providers, edge providers. How does the money flow between that? How does the different pricing? What are the commercial agreements? So something we need to think about and put those systems in place. The good news is that, you know, GSMA has done a great job of defining a new standard called Billing and Charging Evolution, BCE, and that has provided the flexibility and anticipated building out the ecosystem here. And then finally, as we move to these mission critical applications, there's something that we have to think about, and this is kind of changing the mindset a little bit. With regards to our enterprise customers, our enterprises are going to want SLAs. Who manages those? Who's responsible for those? Who owns those? All right, so that kind of brings to, you know, a lot of challenges and things we need to think about. So where do we go from here? First and foremost, we really want to talk with our enterprise customers and align our capabilities with their digital transformation initiatives. So really understanding what's important to them and working that backwards to use cases that we can provide with our 5G networks. Second, it's all great. We're going to, you know, our 5G rollout is going to be quite costly. So we have to make sure that we are monetizing these investments. So certainly, you know, there's a lot of this kind of straightforward advanced mobile broadband offerings, but what really are these new use cases, these new capabilities that we're going to bring, you know, that we can monetize, and how are we going to monetize those, right? It's got to go beyond the, you know, so much for data, so much for a message, so many minutes for a voice call, right? We have to be flexible and think about the new charging models that we need to bring for these different use cases, and managing the complexity around those. And then finally, let's make sure that we are utilizing all the capabilities that 5G is bringing, right? We're not just trying to sell on, hey, look at this new big pipe that we've brought, and this is what we'll charge you for it. There are a lot of capabilities that are coming. Let's understand those. Let's map those to use cases while it's ultra low latency, whether it's network slicing, whether it's new security features. Let's make sure that we're mapping those to use cases. And also, again, I think this was said before in Tariq and Peter's session, it's not just 5G alone. Let's look at all of the other digital advancements that are taking place and bringing them together with 5G, whether it's artificial intelligence, things we're doing in big data, edge computing. Let's wrap all this together and really bring some new and exciting use cases and value to enterprises and their digital transformation. So I will wrap up there, Johnny. I'd like to thank everybody for their time today.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you for a very informative presentation, David. I think you've summarized a lot of the points there mentioned in the previous presentation, and of course, comments from Tariq and others. Thanks again. So late in the evening, your time. Great. Now, I'd like to invite Anthony Rodrigo, Group CIO of Axiata Group, and Thrushera Kadawata, CEO of Axiata Digital Labs, to share their experience in Axiata's IT transformation. So Anthony and Thrushera, the screen is yours.
Yeah, so I will cover this presentation in two segments. First, we'll give you a bit of background into our IT transformation, why we did it, and then how that went. And then Thrushera, my colleague, will talk more about the engine behind it. So if you just click the next slide, please. So the problem statement was really, we had being a brownfield set of MNOs, a fairly legacy IT BSS stack, which basically had a higher cost to run and slower go to market, and of course mainly a vendor controlled IT backyard, which basically meant it was really difficult to. So if you click, so basically what we did was next slide. To transform to a digital telco, we realized that we need to really increase agility of the stack and have the ability to kind of experiment at lower cost, and obviously upgrade the IT skills. As Tariq also mentioned, this is the bigger problem for the brownfield operators, to really kind of get upgrade on the skills to run a new stack. Click twice, please. Next slide. One more, please. Yeah, so the fundamental change that we did in Axiata a few years ago was that we looked at that traditional way of looking at the IT stack, mainly around the BSS sort of blocks. And we said, let's disaggregate the BSS to basically a set of microservices, because we were looking at services beyond telco. It is not just a connectivity, but beyond connectivity. And that means you've got to support multiple different customer journeys. It can vary from connectivity to insurance to micro lending to different kind of services, and that each journey will be composed of different set of microservices. That means the disaggregation of the traditional BSS stack. So we looked at basically the building blocks of kind of a rewired IT architecture was based on data, a single data lake. Obviously, APIs open across the board from your core network to your BSS to yours, etc. And of course, microservices-based middleware architecture. And a cloud stack, we are looking at a hybrid cloud, depending on the different geos that we have. Some, of course, are on full cloud, some are on hybrid. And then, very importantly, the talent development, because once you do this kind of IT rewiring, the talent has to be completely upgraded. And the final part is owning it, basically going from that sort of vendor dependent mostly stack to really owning that entire DevOps value chain to be able to run at that speed. So click once, please. So basically, what we've done is we began the journey in 2018 or so across the 6 markets, and we built the entire stack around this hamburger architecture, we call it, layered architecture, where we have the legacy systems, open API layer on top of it, And then you have digital stack, which is basically the microservice engine, data lake, and of course, more lately, we put in the AI factory component, basically running a completely automated AI, pipeline, which essentially serves the front end channels. And then the open API layer that is opened up towards northbound to be developers, OTT partners, aggregators, and even our own apps. So we basically build our own one-channel apps to the same API layer. Now, with this kind of change, the targets that we set ourselves was really drastically reduce the go-to-market time, and then also reduce IT costs, and obviously reduce the change request cost towards the vendors to almost zero, so that we get that agility on the digital layer. Now, we set this up as a 4-year journey, and we beat most of the KPIs here already. So it's been a great journey, which actually has pretty much changed the DNA of IT across our footprint as we speak. Next slide, please. Now doing this sort of transformation to this hamburger stack, we had 3 key tracks. One was the architecture itself, open digital architecture. We aligned to the TM Forum 4DA. Second bit was really around the middleware, which is running this new stack. I think Tariq also kind of covered this in his piece. It's a basically cloud-ready microservices environment with an AI factor built into it. And then the final piece is the take-back control. We call that program take-back control. It's basically bringing that skill in-house to be able to run the DevOps, end-to-end internally. Of course, we have a lot of partners we work with, but we want our IT to kind of control that value chain to be able to have that velocity. Now, this triangle represents also 2 things. It represents, on the one hand, difficulty of doing this transformation. So if you see the bottom of the pyramid, basically the most difficult part was take-back control. Easiest part is architecture. In the middle is this the engine. And then also the other piece is that the most impact in terms of financial impact actually came from take-back control and DTE middleware. So basically what we've done over the years is this, with the experience of almost 6,000 APIs published across the footprint, internally and externally as well, and a very large microservices, backyard. We built this platform called ADL DTE, which Tushara will talk more about, and that's the middleware that we're actually using to run the IT stack transformation. So with that, I will transfer to Tushara, if you can please take over.
Thank you, Anthony. Good day to everyone. Now, we were talking about this digital transformation, and then the API comes as a piece of everything, right? Now, when it comes to API, so it's API strategy have to be evolved from API first to, again, when we are moving, that's taking the spaghetti out of the window. Now, this is what we have done. Move to the next slide. The Rakuten was talking about this platforming. So, and we also believe in the platforming business. And this the digital transformation platform that we do have is ODI aligned microservices based integration middleware, which is supposed to accelerate the digital transformation. How we do that? And you might have to think about the business agility, reliability, and while you create a value by creating a new revenue streams, right? And how you do that, you have to have some of the ready-made components coming in and kind of assembling for you to create a new application, right? Or maybe new service or new layer of IT stack. And that comes with some of the readily available the Kickstarter packs for telcos, the fintechs, or any insurtech, or maybe any enterprise that you're talking about. And while you do that, you are introducing complexity. Now you have to have the governance where actually you manage the security layer, right? So this becomes a de facto the decision maker for any enterprise, right? And while you do that, you are enabling the citizens' development where the business owner of your organization will create the application. So that's what actually we are creating through this DT, where the citizens will be able to create their own experience and the applications. And while we had the polycloud deployment, so we use the existing infrastructure, maybe lower scale infrastructure, that you can deploy these services because it's managed by our orchestrated platform. And the more than often that the developers, when you're kind of assembling your services, you have to make sure that your quality comes first, where you can't spend a lot of time in terms of assuring the quality. Now these platforms create, maybe right click, deploy generate your test cases where you enable CI/CD/D, which is the delivery and deployment and delivery. So that's the killer capability that if you're thinking of reduce the time to market, right? So in our platforms, we have proven in many cases in our six opcos that TTM will be improved by reduced by 40%, which is a significant saving in terms of time to that get your solution out. This facilitate northbound and southbound integration without too much spending time, right? And other thing is the monetization of the software assets through the platform. So you have a lot of capabilities and assets in your organization where you should be able to kind of sell to the marketplace. And yes, we talk about AI first, and then analytics and insights and oversights have to come in from this application. Now, move on. We talk about digital transformation. Go to the next slide. Then any enterprise will face to some of these key challenges. You're talking about digitalization first before you talk about digital transformation. In that case, you have to move on to the paperless organization, right? So next slide, please. Right, paperless organization. So, and then you have to think about bringing in some of the automation like the RPAs and DPAs, digital process automation. Then you have to think about bringing some of the self-care portals that's enabled through this having a microservices. You're creating your own application by the citizens, right? And then AI ML, so your models have to come out very fast since you have all the data is also integrated, then the service is also integrated. Now creating a data, the AI models become much faster and much smoother, right? And while you do that, you should be able to monitor through the real-time dashboards, right? And that might also not enough for an enterprise. That you want to think about the gamification, the leaderboards coming in, right? Which department, which user department, which users, which markets performing the best, and how you really encourage and motivate these people to do a little more, right? And again, is while you do that, you have to make sure that all the plug-in capabilities come in with any open software that is coming in and plugging into the system, like even OpenRAN or open core systems coming in. And finally, so you need to enable large set of people, consultants coming in and working with your platform is enabling that the standard governance framework, automation of CI/CD and everything to become that seamless integration without completely rely on the person's capability, right? So that's what actually we encompassing everything together and created this digital acceleration platform for ASEAN to kind of accelerate much faster and becoming the region's digital champions.
Great, fantastic. Thank you very much, Anthony and Thrusera, for your interesting presentation. For many MNOs and ecosystem players in the audience that are planning or in the process or enabling digital transformation. So last but not least, we move on to our industry panel discussion on digitally transforming MNOs, opportunities and challenges in the 5G era. We have panel participants, and these are, we have the CEO of Bridge Alliance, Guok Cheong. We have CEO of Axiata Digital and Analytics, Srivenas and Gatamenemni, pardon my pronunciation. We have David Hassman, previous presenter, VP of Strategy from Cineverse Technologies. And of course, we have Hiran Joshi, Head of Platform Operations from Rakuten Mobile. The moderator of this panel discussion is Nitin Khanna, who is Head of Media and Communications for Southeast Asia in Accenture. Guok Chi, Srivenas, David and Hiran, welcome and thank you for your participating in this panel discussion. Nitin, the screen is yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Julian. So I think what we're going to do is, why don't we just start with a very small presentation to make sure that all of us are starting at a common page and it is aligned to the theme. But I won't take much time. I think our esteemed speakers have already spoken about many things. And what I wanted to do is just quickly do a very brief presentation and then have much more enriched communication with this esteemed panel. So I think what we are seeing is, and again, this is no new thing. I think all of us are aware that the telco networks are changing drastically, and there are, whether it is technology, the ecosystem, and the innovation and market, I think there are new contours. How we build telecom networks, how we serve our customers has changed a lot in last 4 or 5 years, and this has opened up new possibilities for telcos, and it has opened new experiences and services for our customers. And as an industry, I think we are showing way to many industries that okay, traditional things can be changed and things can be built in a newer way. And if we look at one or two of these, like look at the technology, I think we used to go back to very specific equipment providers who will provide us full stack solution. We will deploy them, and that's how we will roll out the products and services. I think many telcos and our panelists and previous speakers, I think Rakuten has shown the world that this can be built in a very different way. It can be cloud native, it can be built on new technologies, it can be built on open technologies. And I think even though some people might think that okay, when you move towards this technology, some of the old technology providers might resist, but I think as an industry we have shown the way that all our network equipment providers also are part of that journey, and they have been able to kind of ride this wave and provide newer solutions to telcos and industry. Similarly, I think innovation, the earlier innovation for telcos used to be you just change a little bit of product characteristics, you make some small change in the pricing, and that's how the innovation will come. I think now with the whole ecosystem play, with whole the open digital architecture, which is what Anthony and other colleague from Axiata Digital was talking about. I think with those play, we are able to provide much better services from various partners as well. And I think the guiding principles which all of us have been using is that okay, we need to focus on automation, we need to focus on orchestration. And I think the world started with saying, okay, how can we do a 2-speed IT, 3-speed IT, but I think now it is a multi-speed IT, where we are saying that whether it is channels, which is our core equipments, our cloud journey, all of it can actually run in parallel and at a different speed, and that's how the innovation is come. And again, all of these things are super simple, adopted by all of us, and I don't need to read all of them, but if you look at it, the product catalog, what do we do to our commercial catalog, and how do we hide the complexities of all of it in the SOR is very important today. Data, I think we have shown the various industries that what can be done with data and how can we have really super changing customer experience if we use data for the right thing and for the right customer experience. And going forward, I mean, that if you look at Open RAN and some of the other cloud native technologies, it is bringing all of the innovation and agility. It is bringing the scalability and the flexibility on how we build these networks, and that's what I will discuss with this channel today, saying what are the changes they are seeing, how are they able to provide newer services, and what should we prepare as an industry to be next, because now the customer expectation itself has changed. And if you look at it in the 5G era, across the 3 swim lanes, whether it is the mobile broadband services, whether it is low latency services, as well as IoT services, as an industry, we will be close to a 3/4 of $1 trillion opportunity which is in front of us. And I think while there are many services mentioned here, what we need to focus on is the consumer segment. I think right from B2C, the B2B, government, large enterprises, as well as across industries, we are going to be, as an industry, we are going to be the foundation to provide these new services. And earlier, telcos were building networks saying it is our macro and micro network. I think now how we build networks itself is going to change, and how we think about network planning, how we think about network deployment is also going to be very, very different. So I think with that context and those changes, I think I wanted to start my panel discussion. And why don't I start with you, Hiren, because we heard from Tariq that what innovation and with various deployment models and technology innovation you have done. Tell us what unique products and services you have been able to offer to your customers, which are not considered standard telco offering, and it is not just a standard telco connectivity offering. Tell us what innovation you have been able to bring to your consumers.
So thanks a lot, Nitin. Firstly, let me thank GSMA for inviting me to this forum. So I think most of it background Tariq already covered, but from end user point of view, apart from the basic voice and data messaging services, which which are very traditional, the customer gets embedded portfolio, what we are able to offer him on variety of facets, like life and leisure applications related to traveling, holiday booking, shopping, ebook, digital libraries, media, music content. Also few services on financial segments related to the banking, point cards, payment gateways. Also a lot of offerings which we are able to embed related to the gaming applications, entertainment applications for the business consumers, carrier email, and IoT is just getting unleashed now. So the list is quite big, to be honest, but we are able to embed more than around 70 offerings for our end customers beyond the traditional voice and data services. So I think, and this is again the beginning. There's a lot more to come. This is more of a co-creation with a customer being a completely part of the ecosystem. So it's continuously evolving, and we keep getting as we get more and more engaged.
Excellent. So I think if we can say that you have become like an end-to-end digitally integrated service provider rather than just a telco
solution for multiple embedded portfolios, I would say. Nobody wants to go to 5 different places, and that enables even customer for themselves to bring in their own efficiency levels and comfort.
Very good, very nice. And if I have to call out, Hiren, let's say 2 or 3 very, very broad tech innovation or enablers which have helped Rakuten set up and successfully deliver these services, so that our audience as well as the other panel members can learn from it, saying, yes, this is what I'm missing, this is what I want to build. What 2 or 3 broad tech innovation or enablers you would like to call
out? Frankly speaking, it'll be difficult to name 1, 2, or 3 because it's a over evolving system, I would say. But yeah, to be focusing to your question, I think a couple of things which are prime innovators. So one is the centralizing the ecosystem. Traditionally we have seen the automation digitizations are a lot more segmented across different domains, different facets, fields. Mostly the telcos are used to working network as a different operations, IT operations as a different. So for us, the centralizing this ecosystem, this has been one of the very key innovation enabler, I would say. It brings in a lot of opportunity which were originally unthinkable while working on silos. Second thing I would mention is, again, unifying the operational experience. So how is the customer journey right from onboarding till the usage of the network and all the way down to the paying of their bills? How is the entire journey carried through the unified operational experience? And also the agility in the ecosystem to make it very, very conducive for analytics, automations, machine learning. I think these are some of the key things which have helped us to foster innovation. And as I said, the list is endless, and it keeps on evolving, changing on and as the time goes by.
Exactly. Yeah, I think those are some very, very strong foundations on which we can continue to build new experiences. Let me shift gears and maybe I'll come to you, Gokchi. That what are you seeing between the Bridge Alliance partners? What new services they are offering and which are getting carried forwarded across borders as well? Because you work with a lot of these partners who are across the region and across country. I think it is still easier to provide a service within the geography, but yes, of course, the world is a lot more connected. Of course, there was no travel, and now there is a travel also is starting. What are you seeing between the Bridge Alliance partners in terms of new service and offerings?
Right. Thanks, Nitin. Yeah. So if you look at Bridge Alliance, we are a very tight-knit community of 34 member operators cutting across Asia, Africa, and Middle East. So it is quite interesting to look at the different markets. And as you mentioned, right, different markets have different needs. But to bring the operators together to collaborate and roll out seamless cross-border services definitely is not easy. But we have an advantage because we started back in 2004. And if we think about what's the longest standing cross-border services that telcos have collaborated, it's roaming, right? So Bridge started from roaming, and it's still a core area where we work together, but we have since expanded to IoT, enterprise mobility, communication platform as a service, and 5G and more. So when I look at new services that our member operators are collaborating together, I would say that there are two key driving forces behind those services, right? Number one is about market demand. So customers coming to us and say, actually, I want this, right? I'm not getting this. And if you look at the markets that we're serving, every market is very different. And it's really not easy going into individual market and working with individual telco. So customers are coming to us and say, can you provide us an experience which can harmonize the solution across the region and help us to reduce the pain of working with telco? Yeah, okay. Okay. Second area that really when the operators come together is to co-create and ensure that we can meet the need of the future needs of our customer, right? So the collaboration to lift services that we have today to the next level. And I will give one example in that area, IoT. We have been talking about IoT. IoT is not new, but if you want to roll out connected products across the region in a seamless way, it is still not so easy. So Bridge Alliance has been working with our member operators to ensure we harmonize the solution. We work together to look at how we can align the way we operate and serve our customer better. And more importantly, commercially, right? How do we align so that, again, we reduce the friction of customers as they look at how they can connect their products across the region. So I would say that's an area that we've been progressing very well and position ourselves as a gateway to Asia. So that's where we'll continue to innovate and live ourselves and provide services that meet the needs of customers demanding, right, that seamless service across the region. The other area when I talk about co-creation to serve the future needs of customers, that's important as we move into 5G era. And Bridge Alliance, we actually came together in 2020, February. I still remember that was my last business trip before the borders all closed up, where we kick off a task force working together with our member operator, SKT, Singtel, PCSW, to actually build a federated edge hub. And that is something that we wanted to look at how we can enable application providers and customers to have a single portal, right, to discover, enable, and provision applications across different telco edge. So that's something that we have kickstarted in 2020. And this year, actually, we did a hub-to-hub interoperability test with Telefonica. So we have advanced beyond just a POC and looking at how we can build a layer that can enable the telcos to expose their edge compute. That's really an area that is more future-proofing, right? So if you look at 5G today, customers are also struggling to look at what can 5G do for me, right? In the B2B space and in the B2C. So that's an area that we'll continue to work with our member operators. And it's not just limiting to our operators, as we have heard all the speakers, right? It's
Understood.
about working with a lot more different partners. So we do have a technology partners program where we work with different partners. Cineverse is our partner as well, right? Edison and a lot more, and startup as well. So that's an area that we will continue to co-create and make sure that collectively as an alliance, we'll deliver services that will meet the needs of customers tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Yoshi. That's really useful. And I think I was going to ask you about the future, but you have already covered that. That what should we prepare for future? I want to talk to you and Hiren about ecosystem, but I want to carry forward the thought of this customer experience and how do we serve it. So let me for a moment go to Srinivas, and I hope I can call you Srinivas. So
yeah, Srini is good. Thanks.
Srini is good. Thank you, Srini. So tell me, first of all, I think it is important for us to understand where do you sit within the group, and because your designation says CEO for data and analytics, digital, so we need to really understand where do you fit so that the audience get the context, and then I can ask you some relevant questions. So why don't you take 2 minutes to explain us that where do you sit within the group and what's your role?
So, I mean, very simplistically, ADA, I mean, as we're branded, we were set up with a view to capture the value of enterprise spending from digital data analytics and of course, in the space of e-commerce.
Sure.
Simplistically, we are like an S4 Capital or Accenture Song. We integrate media, tech, analytics, creative and e-commerce capabilities to drive marketing and sales transformation. If you look at our client base, we serve about, I would say, over 1,000 enterprises across the region. The biggest sector we service, although being born out of a telco, the biggest sector we service actually is banking, financial services, insurance. Next is consumer product groups, telco being third is a big sector for us, of course, naturally because of the heritage of Axiata Group. And then finally, automotive and some of these emerging ones. As a business, Axiata, of course, owns majority, but our other shareholders are SoftBank as well as Sumitomo Corporation. We are made up of, essentially, we're operating in 10 countries, made up of digital specialists, e-commerce folks, analytics, and really, I mean, if you look at the makeup, we have folks from media agencies, creative agencies, IBMs of sorts, and management consulting.
Very nice, very nice. I think that gives us a good context. So Shini, if I understand, you are sitting right at the cusp and the triage of technology, digital, and data. Okay. And I'm not going to ask you that what are you providing as a new experience. Tell us what are you seeing different in customer expectations? What different does our customers expect from us in this 5G world, in this data world, in this digital world? What have you seen change in past few years in terms of customer expectations from telcos?
Absolutely, right. And I think one of my fellow panelists was saying, I mean, they have to hate their telcos a little bit less than they are today. and I'm sure what
that love has increased
teams are doing is doing a little bit of helping, hopefully that by providing much better seamless, integrated, and actually digital offerings. I mean, very simplistically, customers want seamless experience. It's a bit like we have a saying, especially as we work a lot with banks. The day you need to walk into a bank to get service is the day you're going to churn out of the bank. And you'll move to somebody else because you don't want the hassle of ever going to a physical location to get anything done anymore.
Yeah.
And I think I mean, I did see one of your slides, I mean, omni-channel. I think the omni-channel for the consumer of today and the consumer of future it's just different digital channels where I spend my time and how do I get service in the channel of my choice. Where do you spend most of your digital time? Of course, apart from OTT, Netflix of the world, etc. You spend a lot of time in messaging platforms. You spend a lot of your time in super apps. So how does the telco connectivity, especially offerings, enable you on the channels where the consumer is? Of course, all the telcos, of course, have their own apps as well, where they want to provide services, but they're also, I mean, the consumer also demands the same equivalent services on the super apps that they might exist, or on the messaging platforms like WhatsApp or in Thailand Online or Viber, or any of these platforms that they are on.
Okay, okay, very interesting. And now that you have kind of transferred this journey, some of these things you would have perfected, but some of the things I'm sure in a digital world is always like a continuous improvement. What new data analytics or digital technologies you are experimenting with your clients or with your customers? What are you trying? What do you think could be like a next wave of success for a digital analytics organization?
Yeah, so maybe let me break it up into a few things. The first one is how, I mean, I think it's still an age-old problem that we are constantly working on, and I think we'll probably continue working for next many years, is how do you constantly keep optimizing the customer journey in order to drive better and better conversion rate optimization, better outcomes, better LTV for telcos with the consumers, right? So we deploy a lot of technology, and a lot of it is actually data collection, what's happening at every touch point. How do you personalize that offering at that touch point? How do you enable that somebody puts something into a cart and they don't forget, or if they forget, how do you remind them to come back? And how do you overall improve your overall the conversion rate, so to speak? The second big thing that actually a lot of focus for us for the last 1 year, and I think will continue to be, is today, different platforms that the consumer interacts with most of the services have a different view of the consumer. So if you're sitting on the marketing cloud, has a different view of the consumer, to the DMP has a different view, the website has a different view, sometimes the app might have a different view. How do you bring in all of everyone to the same 360-degree view of the consumer? So the consumer is not frustrated and irritated through the process. So how do you create one single social login across all of them, maybe as an example, or one single login? And even, for example, if you ever have to, I mean, God forbid, ever have to call the call center, hopefully the call center, once the call happens, the call center person has complete view of the consumer too. So how do you integrate all of this data in a seamless manner and reactivate? So a lot of focus has been for us around customer data platforms. How do we deploy customer data platforms and actually drive all the segmentation on top of it, audience and activation on SMS, on email, or on WhatsApp, or any of those actual channels. One final thing I think we've been experimenting is how do you enable more and more super apps as platforms for telco new customer acquisitions.
Okay.
Today, a lot of it happens, of course, offline, but also happens on the telco's own app and our websites.
Yep.
They don't happen as much on third-party apps, which is where you might be procuring many other services, your food, your taxis, etc. But why are postpaid acquisitions and number selections that are not happening on third-party super apps? And we have been experimenting quite a lot on that too.
Excellent. Very, very interesting. So I think with that, we have spoken a lot about consumer, and I think at this moment, I want to segue to you, David. As a technology provider, what are you seeing that for telcos to serve both B2B, B2C, M2M, IoT? I think the customer set itself is becoming very, very diverse. What do you believe as a technology provider and partner to many of these telcos are the critical capabilities which as an industry we should build or we continue to build to serve this diverse set of customers, David?
Great question. Great question. I think at the high level, at the very high level, we have to really master the capability of managing a customer experience across an expanding ecosystem of partners and customers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have a legacy of we're very good at managing customers on our own network. But now as this expands to cloud service providers, edge service providers, enterprise applications that may be sitting in the cloud, or they may be sitting on an enterprise premise, we really have to learn how to manage those. And organizations like the Bridge Alliance, they're showing a lot of market leadership and best practices, kind of getting out ahead of this.
Yeah.
At Cineverse, we've been managing and helping bring tools for our operator customers for over 30 years in the roaming market. But 5G is bringing something different. Digital transformation is bringing something different. So the different components, I think we need to look at, right? I mean, there's kind of the table stake stuff, like the technical infrastructure that is going to help us, manage this ecosystem, whether it's the 5G signaling controllers that will, help us, pass data and information across the various network, while it's some of the security infrastructure, like, the 5G stuff. But then again, speaking to the manageability of that, right? What are the policy and the visibility tools that we need to manage those experiences across the disparate networks? And then finally, on that one, with all of that, there's the big question of who is the owner of that customer experience, right? Who's going to own that SLA? Is it the cloud provider, the application provider? Is it the mobile operator, right? So a lot of things we need to kind of figure out there. And then probably most important all is how are we going to monetize that total experience, right? Who is paying who? What are the terms? I mentioned it a little bit before, right? We have the BCE standard to help us, now monetize these different models with the different players. Cineverse has built their platform on blockchain technology, so it very easily supports all the different players and different models. And frankly, I'm happy to say that really over the last 12 months, our operator customers have ramped up the deployments of this technology, partially in anticipation of 5G and 5G services, but really for here and now with IoT type of services. So, I think those are kind of the different aspects that we have to look at for the capabilities we need to be bringing to market, again, to managing that full customer experience.
Excellent. So I think with this, I just wanted to kind of change the topic a little bit, and I want to come back to you, Hiren and Bokchi, and talk about this ecosystem. I think this is becoming very common thread in all of our discussion. I just wanted to understand what exactly it means for telcos to build that ecosystem, and who are the critical players. How do we become successful in building that ecosystem? So maybe I'll start with you, Hiren, and Bokchi, if you can add to that. I think let's just talk a little bit about this ecosystem which we are trying to build.
That's very, very vital question, Nitin. So I mean, the traditional mindset has been just let's start getting the automated, let's do this, let's do that. But seldom the time is spent in building the ecosystem, which becomes so vital in the current days. So so in our experience, there are multiple things which needs to be thought through in investing time, effort, energy on what are the key ecosystem enablers. So there are many which are more specific to the industries, but what few things which have helped me, which might help more of the operators. So one of them, for example, is the library which we have built, more like a democratized library where people can start building their own modules. They keep contributing, and then the rest of the community has an access to just pick and choose, put it in the flow, start working it. So number one, this gives opportunity for entire spectrum of people to contribute, because everybody has a very different view of looking at it, and the consumer get benefited from a very diversified contribution, something like YouTube model. So so I think this and then there is also another key enablers around building the centralized tool systems. Like I was talking, the centralizing the ecosystems, for example, the inventory management, topology management. Often these are more of distributed ecosystems across different domains. But when you bring them together, it unleashes a very, very important power for the people who want to bring it together and build an innovative automations and the different solutions. A similar thing is, I can think of is the knowledge management, which Tariq was thinking about. So this is nothing new, which has been there since ages in almost all industries. But how do you use it like a key enabler? How do you make it so accessible, easy to contribute, easy to understand in a digitized content, and for people to use it as a way of life? And if it becomes part and parcel of the everyday life, then there's so much of a cross knowledge which gets across different people across the organization. Think the strength it can give, the potential it has to unleash when you are actually able to bring it together, make it available for your rest of your community. So I think it's a vital question. There's no direct answer, but for us, this has been one of the very, very important thing to plan it well. Fortunately, we have been in a green field, so we got a time to think and build the right from beginning. So, yeah.
Exactly. Gokchi, what are you seeing? And not many of the Bridge Alliance partners are not greenfield, and they're kind of weaving their wings as they fly. So, what are you seeing?
So when we talk about ecosystem, I mean, it's such a at times overused word, right? But it's really important to see exactly how do you line up the partners that we can bring to the table to co-create. So as we move into the 5G era, Bridge has launched our 5G work group, right? So we have a 5G work group for B2B and one for B2C. So for example, in the area of B2B, we are trying to look at what 5G can do, how do we unlock the value? And in order to do that, we do have to bring our ecosystem partners together, the OT partners and the customer themselves. So today we are already seeing our member operators doing that actively. So for example, AIS in Thailand works with Mitsubishi Electric, United Electric, and a lot of other OT partners to co-smart manufacturing, right? So that's really important because you need the various stakeholders in the same room, looking at different angle of the problem so that collectively we can solve a holistic problem, right? And not just part of it, and it won't work. So that's an example of how the operators have been working with different partners. We are also seeing, for example, Singtel in Singapore doing collaboration with Hyundai, right, in terms of the automotive area. So again, a lot of such collaboration with very specific partners so that collectively we have a full view of the problem that we're trying to solve. Even more importantly, is really transforming the industry, what the industry is trying to deliver. And telco is a key stakeholder, but we are not the whole, right? So that's really important, right?
Very good, thank you. I know I'm getting signals that we will run out of time, but just wanted to ask one last thing to you, Srini, before we wind up. I think in a data and technology-led world, one important thing which you can never skip or miss is this whole culture building, mindset building of serving your customers. How did you build it? What are you still trying to build? Just help us understand a little bit of that before we wind up this great session.
So, I mean, interestingly, right? Every industry talks about how they're getting disrupted. I mean, for sure, the whole telco industry has been talking about it for the longest time with the OTTs. But interestingly, the industry that I feel most disrupted is being the whole media and the whole media and the media agency landscape from technology and others. And then every 2 years, there's a complete new wave. There is TV, a whole bunch of other stuff, and hence, for us, we do have an internal saying. The half-life of your knowledge is maximum 18 months and that's shrinking constantly. So, I mean, every new joiner that joins the company and I talk to them, I always remind them that, I mean, half your knowledge will be irrelevant in 18 months, so better start replenishing it. And hence for us, I think one of the most important cultural value for us, and it's plastered on most of our office walls, is the growth mindset. And hence, if we keep learning, and already, I mean, if you've seen the last 4 years since ADA started, we went from 100 to 1,000 people. Initially, it was all about Facebook, Google marketing. Now that's, I mean, completely, I think being taken over, a large part of it by TikTok and some of these platforms. And TikTok is coming in both with creative and e-commerce elements, and super apps in our region, and how to use Grab and Shopee and some of these apps in order to actually drive performance for clients. That's of course always complemented with technology. And if you look at the marketing tech stack, there are like now at least 200 technology platforms that one CMO has to use to drive digital transformation within the marketing. So there's just so much one has to keep picking up all the time, and hence, yeah, having a growth mindset. For us, we were quite, I think, lucky and very blessed to have amassed, I think, talent from very different industries, and all pooled together. We have folks from, like I was saying earlier, from media, creative, tech, management consulting, people from brands, and from brands from multiple industries, all in one single place. And that's really, I think, helped us a lot.
Excellent. I think with that growth and learning mindset, I thank you, Srini, Bokchi, Hiren, David. There is a lot to talk to this esteemed panel, but I think we have run out of time. Back to you, Julian and Johnny, to summarize, and thank you, everybody, one more time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you for a great moderation, Nitin. Fantastic. Great. Great. So this pretty much completes DXAF's Accelerating Digital Transformation and Networks virtual seminar. And I really hope that you all found the insights and experience shared, very relevant and informative. Now, digital transformation is a never-ending journey, and it's not only about deploying 5G networks, and it's been mentioned before as well, okay, by previous speakers. And 5G is only one of the many digital transformation enabling components, and it requires harmonized and coordinated technical, commercial, and functional approaches internally and externally to really drive true digital transformation. Before closing, I'd like to remind you about GSMA APAC's Mobile 360 Singapore event, which will be held physically in Singapore on the 2nd and 3rd of August. On the screen there, you will see the details of the industry summit. The theme of the M360 event is building digital nations and uniting government and technology leaders to define the digital strategy of future generations. And over 2 days, we will have a number of sessions that will sit across technology, commercial strategy, through to policy, including the startup and investment sectors. So please take interest and visit the site. And also, you'll also see the web link on the comment box there as well. Please refer to the details of the M360 Singapore. And for more information, and please visit the website showing in the banner or the link provided in the comment box, as I mentioned before. Now, the XAF community will be holding the Digital Ecosystem Acceleration Symposium on startups, investments, and partnerships in the era of digital transformation on the 2nd day of M360. If you'd like to attend or would like more information about Mobile 360 Singapore, please leave a message in the box as well, and we'll definitely come back to you. That said, thank you again for your participation, and I really look forward to seeing you at M360 or the next DXAF seminar in September. Stay safe and be well. Thank you.